nice and early now. Just come out for a coffee. Not that many people around just yet, so it's quite pleasant at the moment. The birds singing and one or two planes flying overhead, but overall it's not bad. And the birds too, which just gives your soul a lift when you hear the bird song. So anyway, what am I going to speak about? Well, I spoke about escaping diversity the other day. Now, just give us a moment. I'm going to continue in a second. Yeah, I don't necessarily just like to speak about these kind of topics directly in someone's face as they're passing me, so I sort of paused as that guy went by me there. Yeah, so I spoke about recently about escaping diversity. Now, today I want to speak about avoiding diversity and really the difference between boomer generation and the zoomer generation. And hashtag not all, of course, and there's a lot of people in their 60s and 70s and beyond who aren't wealthy, and are struggling, and indeed people who are not necessarily just automatically voting for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael unthinkingly, and just perpetuating the status quo that has left us in this situation, of young people not being able to afford houses, not even being able to find accommodation. Or if they do find it, it's like £1,000 a month or more for fairly substandard accommodation. Like, this is the legacy of what we've been left with, in a sense, by not just our governments, but also, unfortunately, people who voted in those same governments for the last 2 or 3 decades, and that is, the boomer demographic, the boomer generation, sadly. And like I said, it's not all of them, and there's only a certain proportion of them that are wealthy to very wealthy, we'll say. They have their houses, they have 1 or 2 cars, big cars usually as well. Quite a few still in reasonably good health as well, and going on nice holidays every year, and yet voting in the very people who are undermining, the younger generation, the Zoomers, if you like, and essentially throwing them under the bus. I'm not saying they're doing this out of any kind of malice, but this is what's happening. So, the older generation, the boomers, can avoid the worst excesses of mass diversity. The younger generation can't. They have no choice. They're living amongst said people. They're working with people from all over the world. If they're in tech or IT or in any kind of multinational, they're probably surrounded by Indians and other nationalities as well who've been here longer, like Western Europeans, for instance. And you've got Brazilians and various other peoples, often from far-flung parts of the world. And I'm not saying this is altogether a terrible thing or anything, it can be interesting or exciting for a young person in this kind of environment, but essentially we're competing with all these people. Irish people, young people, are having to compete with everyone from everywhere, essentially, who flocked into this country. And when it was just Western Europeans and a certain amount of them, it wasn't such a big deal, really. It didn't upset things that much, and like I said, a lot of people were fine with that up until mid to late 90s. Indeed, I worked in a corporation back then, and it was quite a few Western Europeans there, and it was fine. I liked it. Excuse me, sorry, the fly. Oh, sorry, Jesus. And even up until the early 2000s, I was working in another corporation, and same story. It was mostly Western Europeans, Irish, obviously. But aside from that, it was pretty much just Irish and Western Europeans, and it was fine, And then things changed with the various treaties we signed, and the Eastern Europeans began coming in, 2006, 7, 8, 9 and so on. Recession happened, a lot of Irish emigrated, unfortunately, and these are the kind of the seeds of our destruction were kind of sown around these times. You could say from the 2000s, early 2000s onwards, but really the very start of it was, I suppose, the whole anchor baby charade. the Anchor Baby scam. But the numbers overall were relatively small. You know, as you got into 2000s and then the Lisbon Treaty, which we were coerced into signing, they really accelerated our destruction, our demographic demise, and that's kind of where we are today, you know. And of course the final nail in the coffin, if you like, I don't want to be too black pill about it, but you know, the thing that makes it that bit harder to turn back the tide, if you like, is the Martin wave, the Harris wave, the Varadkar wave, which is equivalent to the Boris wave in Britain, of absolute massive tides of people being facilitated and brought into the country en masse, which just totally overwhelmed our housing sector. But just, you know, services generally became overburdened. I mean, they were already struggling, but the last thing they needed was a massive amount of people being foisted onto our country. And never mind the whole situation with the bypass centres. I mean, that's the final insult, if you like. But anyway, the whole point I'm coming to with all this is the younger people can't avoid diversity in its worst excesses. The older people can, because of their financial circumstances, and because they kind of got out before things got too bad, you know, because they were of pension age. And a lot of them have decent enough pensions. And again, not all, but quite a few do, and especially the ones, the more urban-based, nice parts of Dublin and Galway and so on. And yet these very same people have been voting in the same sharks, the same charlatans that have, you know, that have sealed the fate, if you like, of the younger people, ensured that they can't get on the housing ladder, that they can't afford their accommodation, they can't even find accommodation in a lot of cases, have to commute for a couple of hours into the cities to get work or go to university or whatever. But yeah, the same people, boomers, or some of the boomers anyway, voting in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael forever. They can avoid diversity. The younger people can't avoid it. No choice. And they're dealing with the legacy of the decisions of the boomer class.